The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestones of Windsor Castle as Captain James Morrison adjusted his ceremonial uniform for the third time. The red tunic of the Welsh Guard felt heavier than usual, weighted not just with its gold braiding and brass buttons, but with the significance of the day ahead. Today would mark the most important royal procession in decades, and Morrison had been chosen to lead the escort detail. Princess Catherine Elizabeth stood at her bedroom window, watching the guards assemble in the courtyard below. At 28, she had participated in countless ceremonial events, but this procession felt different. The weight of tradition pressed upon her shoulders like the heavy velvet cloak her ladies-in-waiting would soon drape around her. This journey to Buckingham Palace would officially mark her transition from princess to heir apparent, a role she had prepared for her entire life but never truly wanted. The princess turned away from the window as her private secretary, Margaret Thornton, entered with a stack of briefing papers. Margaret had served the royal family for over 30 years, her silver hair always perfectly arranged, her efficiency legendary throughout the palace. She moved with the quiet authority of someone who had witnessed history unfold countless times. "Your Royal Highness, the procession route has been finalized," Margaret announced, spreading a detailed map across the mahogany desk. "We'll depart Windsor at precisely 11 o'clock. The Welsh Guard will form the primary escort, with Captain Morrison leading the detail. The journey should take approximately 2 hours, accounting for the ceremonial pace and designated stops." Princess Catherine studied the route, her finger tracing the path that would take her through centuries of British history. The procession would wind through ancient villages where her ancestors had traveled, past landmarks that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Each mile of the journey carried the weight of 1,000 years of monarchy. Captain Morrison reviewed his orders one final time in the guard room. The Welsh Guard had been chosen for this honor due to their distinguished service record and unwavering loyalty to the crown. His men had trained for months, practicing the precise formations and timing required for such a significant event. Every step, every turn, every salute had been rehearsed until it became second nature. The captain's thoughts drifted to his grandfather, who had served in the same regiment during World War II. The old man had often spoken of the honor that came with protecting the royal family, of the responsibility that extended far beyond mere ceremony. Morrison understood that responsibility now, feeling it settle into his bones like the morning mist that clung to the castle walls. In the royal stables, Master of Horse Thomas Whitfield supervised the final preparations of the state landau, a magnificent golden carriage that had carried royalty for over 2 centuries. The vehicle gleamed under the careful attention of the stable staff, every brass fitting polished to mirror brightness. The 4 magnificent gray horses that would pull the carriage stood ready, their coats brushed to perfection, their ceremonial tack checked and rechecked. Whitfield ran his weathered hands along the carriage's ornate framework, feeling the smooth wood that had been crafted by master artisans generations ago. This landau had witnessed coronations, state visits, and moments of national celebration. Today, it would carry Princess Catherine toward her destiny, just as it had carried countless royals before her. The princess's personal maid, Sarah Collins, carefully arranged the ceremonial regalia that would accompany the journey. The diamond diadem, with its precious stones catching the morning light, rested in its velvet-lined case. The deep blue sash of the Order of the Garter lay beside it, a symbol of the highest order of chivalry. Each piece represented not just wealth and privilege, but centuries of tradition and the unbroken chain of constitutional monarchy. As the clock approached 10 o'clock, servants throughout Windsor Castle moved with increased urgency. The kitchen staff prepared refreshments for the journey, though protocol dictated that the princess would eat very little during travel. The security detail conducted final sweeps of the route, their modern concerns meshing with ancient traditions in ways that would have seemed impossible to earlier generations. Outside the castle walls, crowds had begun to gather along the procession route. Word of the ceremony had spread through social media and traditional news outlets, drawing spectators from across the kingdom and beyond. Families set up folding chairs and picnic blankets, their excitement building as the departure time approached. Children waved small Union Jack flags, their faces painted with red, white, and blue stripes. Princess Catherine returned to her dressing room, where her ladies-in-waiting waited with the ceremonial gown she would wear during the procession. The dress, created by the same designers who had crafted her mother's coronation robes, represented a perfect blend of historical tradition and contemporary elegance. As the silk fabric settled around her shoulders, Catherine felt the full weight of her heritage. Captain Morrison gathered his men in the courtyard, their red uniforms creating a striking contrast against the gray stone walls of the ancient castle. The Welsh Guard stood at attention, their bearskin caps adding impressive height to their already commanding presence. Each soldier understood the honor of their selection for this duty, the culmination of years of dedicated service and unwavering loyalty. The captain's voice carried clearly across the courtyard as he delivered his final instructions. Every man knew his position. Every movement had been choreographed with military precision. The procession would be a living display of British pageantry, a demonstration of the seamless blend of military tradition and royal ceremony that had evolved over centuries. As 11 o'clock approached, the final preparations reached their crescendo. The state landau rolled into position, its wheels crunching softly on the gravel. The horses tossed their heads, sensing the excitement that filled the air. Princess Catherine emerged from the castle's main entrance, her appearance drawing a collective intake of breath from the assembled staff and guards. The moment had arrived. History waited to unfold along the ancient roads that connected Windsor to London, carried forward by the measured steps of the Welsh Guard and the turning wheels of a golden carriage. The procession to Buckingham Palace was about to begin, marking not just a journey through the English countryside, but a passage through time itself. The great gates of Windsor Castle swung open with a ceremonial grandeur that had marked such moments for over 900 years. Princess Catherine settled into the plush velvet seats of the state landau, her hands folded carefully in her lap to prevent wrinkles in her ceremonial gown. The morning air carried the scent of fresh flowers and polished leather, mingling with the distant sounds of gathering crowds. Captain Morrison raised his sword in salute, the blade catching the sunlight as it arced through the air. Behind him, 48 members of the Welsh Guard stood in perfect formation, their red tunics creating a bold splash of color against the ancient stone backdrop. The captain's voice rang out clear and commanding as he gave the order to advance, his words echoing off the castle walls with centuries of military tradition. The procession began its stately movement through the castle grounds, the horses' hooves creating a rhythmic percussion against the cobblestones. Master Thomas Whitfield rode alongside the carriage on his bay gelding, his experienced eye constantly monitoring the horses for any sign of distress or irregularity. The gray horses moved with practiced elegance, their training evident in every perfectly measured step. Local residents lined the route even within the castle grounds. Palace staff and their families granted the rare privilege of witnessing such an historic moment from within the royal residence. Children pressed against their parents' legs, their eyes wide with wonder at the spectacle unfolding before them. The princess acknowledged their presence with gentle waves, her smile genuine despite the formal nature of the occasion. As the procession passed through the final gates of Windsor Castle, the true magnitude of public interest became apparent. Thousands of spectators lined both sides of the road, their cheers creating a wave of sound that rolled ahead of the advancing column. Police officers maintained orderly barriers while mounted units provided additional security, their modern role seamlessly integrated with the ancient pageantry. The Welsh Guard maintained their perfect formation despite the crowds, each soldier focused on his individual responsibility while contributing to the collective display of military precision. Their bearskin caps nodded in unison with each step, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the heartbeat of the watching nation. Captain Morrison felt a surge of pride as he observed his men's flawless execution of their duties. Princess Catherine found herself moved by the enthusiasm of the crowds, their genuine affection for the monarchy evident in their joyful faces and enthusiastic applause. Young mothers held babies aloft for a better view, while elderly veterans stood at attention in recognition of the military escort. The diversity of the gathering reflected the modern Britain she would someday serve as queen, a tapestry of cultures united in celebration of their shared heritage. The first scheduled stop came at the village of Old Windsor, where the mayor waited in full ceremonial regalia. The procession halted with military precision, the horses coming to rest exactly at the predetermined mark. Local dignitaries stepped forward to present a bouquet of flowers grown in the village gardens. their stems wrapped in ribbons bearing the colors of both the local council and the royal standard. Captain Morrison dismounted and approached the carriage, his role requiring him to receive the formal addresses from local officials. The mayor's speech, though brief, eloquently captured the community's pride in hosting such a significant moment in royal history. Children from the local school had prepared a small performance, their voices raised in a traditional song that had been sung to welcome royalty for generations. The princess accepted the flowers with gracious words, her voice carrying clearly to the assembled crowd despite the emotional weight of the moment. She spoke of the connection between the monarchy and the people, of the shared responsibility to preserve both tradition and progress. Her words were carefully chosen but delivered with genuine warmth, reflecting years of training in public speaking, combined with natural empathy. As the procession prepared to resume its journey, an elderly woman stepped forward from the crowd. Mrs. Eleanor Davies, 93 years old, had witnessed the coronation of 3 monarchs during her lifetime. Captain Morrison initially moved to intervene, but the princess gestured for him to allow the approach. Mrs. Davies presented a small handmade brooch, explaining that it had been crafted by her late husband as a wedding gift 60 years earlier. The simple gesture created a moment of profound connection between past and present, between individual citizen and royal institution. Princess Catherine accepted the gift with tears in her eyes, understanding that such spontaneous acts of affection represented the true foundation of constitutional monarchy. The crowd fell silent, sensing the significance of the exchange between generations. The Welsh Guard reformed their ranks as the procession resumed its journey toward London. The route wound through picturesque countryside where sheep grazed in fields bounded by ancient stone walls. Historic churches dating back to Norman times stood sentinel over villages that had changed little in appearance despite the passage of centuries. The continuity of the landscape seemed to mirror the enduring nature of the monarchy itself. Traffic had been diverted from the main roads, allowing the procession to travel at its ceremonial pace without modern interruptions. Police helicopters maintained discreet surveillance from above, while motorcycle units scouted ahead, their contemporary security measures carefully coordinated to avoid disrupting the historical nature of the event. The integration of old and new reflected the monarchy's ability to adapt while maintaining its essential character. The afternoon sun climbed higher as the procession continued its measured progress toward the capital. Villages along the route had organized their own celebrations, with bunting stretched between buildings and local brass bands playing patriotic melodies. Each community seemed determined to contribute something unique to the day's festivities, creating a patchwork of local traditions united in common purpose. Princess Catherine felt the weight of history settling around her like a familiar cloak as the journey progressed. Each mile brought her closer to Buckingham Palace and the formal ceremonies that awaited her arrival. The faces in the crowds became a blur of smiles and waves, but she sensed the deeper current of expectation and hope that flowed beneath the surface celebration. Captain Morrison checked his pocket watch, noting with satisfaction that the procession remained precisely on schedule, despite the various stops and interactions with local officials. The Welsh Guard continued their flawless execution of ceremonial duties, their professionalism serving as a visible symbol of the military's loyalty to the crown. The bond between armed forces and monarchy, forged over centuries of shared service, remained as strong as ever in the modern era. The procession entered the historic town of Eton as church bells began their celebratory peal across the Thames Valley. The famous college buildings rose majestically beside the route, their Gothic architecture providing a dramatic backdrop for the royal passage. Students and faculty lined the ancient streets, their academic gowns creating patches of black among the colorful crowd. Princess Catherine could see the chapel where she had attended services during her youth, its familiar spires bringing back memories of simpler times. Eton's headmaster stepped forward with ceremonial dignity, accompanied by senior boys who had been selected for the honor of presenting the college's formal address. The tradition of royal visits to Eton stretched back centuries, creating an unbroken chain of connection between the monarchy and one of Britain's most prestigious educational institutions. Captain Morrison observed the proceedings with professional interest, noting how seamlessly the academic ceremony integrated with the military protocol. The college choir emerged from the chapel, their voices raised in a specially commissioned anthem that echoed off the medieval stone walls. The music seemed to transport listeners back through time, connecting the present moment with countless generations of students who had sung similar hymns to welcome royal visitors. Princess Catherine felt deeply moved by the performance. Understanding that these young voices represented the future leaders of the nation she would someday serve. As the procession prepared to cross the River Thames, the symbolic significance of the moment was not lost on any participant. The bridge connecting Eton to Windsor represented more than mere geography. It linked two worlds of tradition and responsibility. The Welsh Guard maintained their impeccable formation as they marched across the ancient stonework, their red uniforms reflected in the slow-moving waters below. Local rowing clubs had organized a flotilla of boats decorated with bunting and royal standards. Crew members raised their oars in salute as the state landau passed overhead, creating a striking tableau that photographers captured from multiple angles. The scene evoked memories of great state occasions throughout British history, when river pageants had celebrated monarchs and marked moments of national significance. The crowds grew denser as the procession approached the outskirts of London, with early arrivals claiming prime viewing positions along the route. Families had traveled from across the Commonwealth, their distinctive accents and traditional dress adding international flavor to the predominantly British gathering. Television crews from around the world positioned their equipment for optimal coverage, understanding that this procession would be watched by millions of viewers in dozens of countries. Princess Catherine noticed a group of military veterans who had formed their own honor guard beside the road. Despite their advanced age, they stood at rigid attention, their chests displaying medals earned in conflicts spanning 7 decades. Captain Morrison recognized several faces from previous ceremonial events, men who continued to serve the crown through their participation in such occasions, long after their active military service had ended. The route passed through Slough, where local councils had organized elaborate decorations transforming the ordinary streets into a festival of red, white, and blue. Shopkeepers stood in their doorways, many wearing their finest clothes despite the informal nature of their viewing positions. The diversity of the crowd reflected modern Britain's multicultural character, with families from Pakistani, Caribbean, Polish, and dozens of other backgrounds joining in the celebration. At a predetermined point, the procession paused to allow for a formal address from the mayor of Slough. The official ceremony included the presentation of a specially commissioned piece of artwork depicting the town's industrial heritage alongside symbols of royal tradition. Princess Catherine accepted the gift with genuine interest, asking informed questions about the local community and its contributions to the national economy. Captain Morrison used the brief halt to check on his men's condition, ensuring that the lengthy march had not caused any problems with equipment or personnel. The Welsh Guard had trained extensively for this endurance test, but the captain's experienced eye caught minor adjustments in posture that indicated fatigue beginning to set in. He made subtle hand signals to his sergeants, who discreetly passed water bottles along the ranks during the ceremony. A local children's choir performed a medley of songs including traditional Welsh melodies in honor of the Welsh Guard. Their innocent voices carried across the assembled crowd, creating a moment of pure joy that seemed to lift the spirits of everyone present. Princess Catherine applauded warmly, her genuine appreciation for the performance evident to all observers. Such spontaneous expressions of local pride had become her favorite aspect of royal duties. The procession resumed its journey as afternoon shadows began to lengthen across the countryside. The pace remained steady and ceremonial, but everyone involved could sense the approaching climax of the day's events. London's sprawling suburbs stretched ahead, their modern developments creating a striking contrast with the medieval pageantry of the royal column. The juxtaposition seemed to symbolize Britain's ability to honor its past while embracing its future. Traffic on parallel roads had reached standstill levels as motorists abandoned their vehicles to join the watching crowds. Police reported unprecedented cooperation from the public, with virtually no incidents despite the massive numbers of spectators. The good-natured atmosphere reflected a national mood of celebration and unity that transcended political differences and social divisions. Princess Catherine found herself reflecting on the weight of responsibility that would soon rest upon her shoulders. The faces in the crowd represented not just subjects to be governed, but individuals with dreams, struggles, and hopes for the future. The monarchy's role in modern Britain required a delicate balance between ceremonial tradition and practical relevance. Between historical continuity and contemporary engagement, the Welsh Guard's drummers began a slow, measured beat that seemed to resonate with the collective heartbeat of the watching nation. The sound carried ahead of the procession, announcing its approach to communities still waiting along the route. Captain Morrison felt a deep sense of pride in his regiment's performance, knowing that they were upholding standards of excellence that stretched back through centuries of military tradition. As the procession entered the final approach to London proper, the magnitude of the crowd reached almost overwhelming proportions. Every available viewing space seemed occupied by enthusiastic spectators, their voices creating a constant background chorus of cheers and applause. Police estimated that over 500,000 people had gathered along the route, making it one of the largest public celebrations in recent British history. The state landau continued its stately progress through increasingly urban landscapes, the horses maintaining their perfect rhythm despite the noise and excitement surrounding them. Master Whitfield's skilled guidance ensured that the animals remained calm and focused, their training and breeding evident in their composed response to the chaotic environment. The successful completion of the journey would require continued excellence from every participant, from the highest-ranking officials to the individual soldiers marching in formation. The procession entered West London as the afternoon sun cast golden light across the urban landscape, transforming ordinary streets into scenes of extraordinary pageantry. The Welsh Guard's red uniforms seemed to glow in the warm light, their brass buttons and ceremonial swords catching and reflecting the rays in brilliant flashes. Captain Morrison could feel the energy of the crowd building as they approached the heart of the capital, where centuries of royal history had unfolded along these same ancient routes. Hammersmith Bridge loomed ahead, its Victorian ironwork decorated with massive royal standards that fluttered in the gentle Thames breeze. The bridge had been temporarily closed to all traffic except the royal procession, creating an almost surreal moment of calm above the busy river. Pleasure boats filled the water below, their passengers waving enthusiastically as the state landau passed overhead. The sight reminded Princess Catherine of great river pageants from British history, when the Thames had served as a royal highway for centuries of monarchs. Local dignitaries waited at the center of the bridge for another ceremonial presentation. The mayor of Hammersmith and Fulham stepped forward with obvious pride, accompanied by representatives from various community organizations. A youth orchestra from local schools had assembled to perform a specially arranged fanfare, their young faces serious with concentration as they prepared to play for royalty. The music echoed dramatically off the bridge's steel structure, creating an almost cathedral-like acoustic effect. Princess Catherine accepted a beautifully bound book documenting the borough's history, its pages filled with photographs and stories spanning from medieval times to the present day. She took time to examine several pages, asking thoughtful questions about the community's evolution and its diverse population. Her genuine interest in local history had become one of her most appreciated qualities, demonstrating that royal duties extended far beyond mere ceremony. The Welsh Guard reformed their ranks with practiced efficiency as the procession prepared to continue into central London. The soldiers had maintained their perfect formation for hours, but Captain Morrison noted the subtle signs of fatigue beginning to show in their movements. He felt immense pride in their professional dedication, knowing that many of these men had served in combat zones where such ceremonial precision had been replaced by life-and-death decisions. Fulham Palace came into view on the left bank of the Thames, its ancient walls reminding observers of London's deep historical roots. The palace had served as the residence of the bishops of London for over 13 centuries, its grounds now home to a museum celebrating the area's rich heritage. Staff members had gathered in the gardens, their period costumes adding another layer of historical authenticity to the day's proceedings. The crowds in Fulham displayed the multicultural character that defined modern London. Sikh families in traditional dress stood beside Caribbean grandmothers, while Polish immigrants mingled with families whose roots in the area stretched back generations. Children of every background waved small Union Jack flags, their enthusiasm transcending cultural differences and creating a truly inclusive celebration of British identity. As the procession entered Putney, church bells began ringing from multiple parishes, their overlapping peals creating a complex symphony that seemed to announce the royal approach to the entire city. The sound carried across the Thames and into surrounding neighborhoods, drawing even more spectators from their homes and offices. Shop owners had closed their businesses for the afternoon, joining their customers on the streets to witness this historic moment. The route passed the starting point of the famous Oxford and Cambridge boat race, where temporary grandstands had been erected for dignitaries and invited guests. University representatives from both institutions stood in academic dress, their presence linking the procession to Britain's educational traditions. The annual boat race had been part of the nation's sporting calendar for nearly 2 centuries, creating another thread in the complex tapestry of British cultural life. Princess Catherine caught sight of a group of children from a local primary school who had created an elaborate display of artwork depicting the royal family. Throughout history, their colorful drawings showed monarchs from different eras, each rendered with the innocent creativity that only children could provide. She requested that the procession pause briefly, stepping down from the carriage to speak personally with several of the young artists about their work. The impromptu interaction created one of the day's most memorable moments, as Princess Catherine knelt beside a 7-year-old girl who had painted a portrait of the state landau. The child explained each detail of her artwork with serious concentration, while the princess listened with complete attention, despite the thousands of spectators watching their exchange. Such spontaneous connections had become hallmarks of her public appearances, demonstrating a natural warmth that resonated with people of all ages. Captain Morrison coordinated with local police to ensure security during the unscheduled stop, his radio crackling with updates from advance teams monitoring the route ahead. The Welsh Guard maintained their protective formation, while allowing space for the princess to interact with the crowd. The soldiers' professional flexibility impressed local officials, who noted how seamlessly military protocol adapted to accommodate royal preferences. The procession resumed its journey through increasingly dense crowds as it approached Putney Bridge. Television helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live footage to audiences around the world. The aerial views revealed the true scale of public participation, with people lining not just the direct route, but gathering in parks and on rooftops throughout the surrounding area. The Thames appeared dotted with vessels of every description, from luxury yachts to simple rowboats. Barnes Common stretched away to the south, its ancient trees providing a green backdrop for the urban pageantry. The Common had remained largely unchanged for centuries, serving as a reminder of the countryside that had once surrounded London before urban expansion transformed the landscape. Local historians had erected informational displays explaining the area's role in royal history, including several instances when medieval monarchs had hunted in these very woods. The afternoon light began to take on the golden quality that photographers prize, casting everything in a warm glow that seemed to enhance the already spectacular scene. Princess Catherine felt a sense of anticipation building as they drew closer to central London and the climax of the day's ceremonies. The faces in the crowd seemed more familiar somehow, as if she was approaching the heart of the realm where her future responsibilities would be centered. Local brass bands had positioned themselves at strategic points along the route, their patriotic melodies creating a musical accompaniment to the visual spectacle. The Welsh Guard's own drummers responded with traditional military rhythms, creating an impromptu musical dialogue that delighted the listening crowds. The interplay between civilian and military music seemed to symbolize the harmony between the monarchy and the people it served. As the procession approached the Thames embankment, the iconic skyline of central London came into view. The Houses of Parliament, Westminster Abbey, and the London Eye created a panorama that combined medieval, Victorian, and contemporary architecture in a uniquely British landscape. Princess Catherine felt her pulse quicken as she recognized the approaching culmination of her journey to Buckingham Palace, where centuries of royal tradition awaited her arrival. The procession crossed Westminster Bridge as Big Ben's bells chimed 4 o'clock, their famous tone resonating across the Thames and through the historic heart of London. The Houses of Parliament rose majestically to the left, their Gothic Revival architecture creating a stunning backdrop for the royal passage. Princess Catherine gazed up at the clock tower where Parliament's timekeeping had marked the rhythm of British democracy for over 150 years. understanding that her future role would require careful coordination with the elected representatives housed within those ancient walls. Crowds on Westminster Bridge created a human tunnel of celebration, their cheers echoing off the stone balustrades and mixing with the sound of the Thames flowing beneath. The bridge had been temporarily cleared of all traffic except the royal procession, allowing spectators to fill the roadway while maintaining safe viewing distances. Police barriers channeled the crowds into organized sections, but their enthusiasm remained uncontained as they witnessed this magnificent display of British pageantry. Captain Morrison could see Westminster Abbey ahead, its twin towers and flying buttresses silhouetted against the afternoon sky. The abbey had hosted coronations for nearly 1,000 years, its stones having witnessed the crowning of 39 monarchs throughout British history. Today's procession would pass directly by the site where Princess Catherine would someday receive her own coronation, a thought that added profound gravity to an already emotionally charged moment. The Welsh Guard's formation remained flawless despite the increasingly complex urban environment, their red uniforms creating a bold contrast against the gray stone of Westminster's historic buildings. Local officials had gathered on the steps of various government buildings, their formal attire adding to the ceremonial atmosphere. Civil servants who rarely witnessed such spectacles pressed against office windows, eager to glimpse a moment of living history passing beneath their workplace. Westminster Abbey's bells joined Big Ben's chimes, creating a magnificent carillon that seemed to celebrate not just this particular procession, but the entire tradition of constitutional monarchy. The Dean of Westminster stood with his clergy on the Abbey steps, their ecclesiastical robes adding religious solemnity to the secular pageantry. The Abbey's choir could be heard singing hymns of celebration, their voices carrying across the square and adding another layer to the complex symphony of the day. Princess Catherine observed the crowds with growing emotion, recognizing that this moment represented more than personal transition. The faces she saw reflected the diversity of modern Britain, with immigrants and native-born citizens joining together in celebration of institutions that transcended individual backgrounds. Children of Pakistani heritage waved flags beside elderly veterans, while Polish construction workers took selfies next to families whose ancestors had witnessed Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. The procession turned onto the Mall, London's grand ceremonial boulevard stretching directly toward Buckingham Palace. The tree-lined avenue had been transformed into a corridor of celebration, with Union Jack bunting stretched between lampposts and temporary grandstands erected for invited dignitaries. The sight took Princess Catherine's breath away, as thousands upon thousands of spectators filled every available space along the mile-long approach to the palace. St. James's Park provided a green sanctuary beside the ceremonial route, its ancient trees offering shade to families who had claimed picnic spots hours earlier. The park's lake reflected the afternoon sunlight, while pelicans and other waterfowl seemed oblivious to the human drama unfolding nearby. The contrast between natural tranquility and public celebration created a uniquely London scene that had been repeated countless times throughout the city's royal history. Captain Morrison felt his chest swell with pride as the Welsh Guard marched down the Mall's perfect straightaway, their synchronized steps creating a rhythmic percussion that echoed off the surrounding buildings. Tourists from every corner of the world lined the route, their cameras capturing images that would preserve this moment for generations to come. The international attention focused on the procession demonstrated the global fascination with British royal traditions. Foreign dignitaries watched from specially constructed viewing platforms, their presence acknowledging the international significance of the occasion. Ambassadors from Commonwealth realms stood alongside representatives from European monarchies, creating a diplomatic gathering that reinforced Britain's continuing relevance on the world stage. The procession had become more than a domestic ceremony. It represented the enduring appeal of constitutional monarchy in an increasingly republican world. The state landau moved with stately grace down the Mall's central carriageway, the gray horses responding to Master Whitfield's expert guidance despite the overwhelming sensory environment. Thousands of camera flashes created a constant sparkle in the afternoon air, while the sound of cheering created an almost physical force that seemed to push the procession forward toward its destination. Street performers who had been granted special permits entertained sections of the crowd during quiet moments, their juggling and music adding carnival atmosphere to the formal proceedings. Food vendors reported unprecedented sales as spectators who had waited for hours sought refreshment without losing their premium viewing positions. The economic impact of the procession would be felt throughout London's hospitality and retail sectors for weeks to come. Princess Catherine noticed a section of the crowd that included wounded veterans from recent military conflicts, their presence serving as a sobering reminder of the sacrifices made in service to the crown. She directed a special acknowledgement toward their group. Her salute returned with obvious emotion by men and women who had served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other theaters of operation. The moment highlighted the monarchy's role as a focal point for national gratitude and remembrance. Television commentators positioned throughout the route provided live coverage to millions of viewers worldwide, their descriptions capturing both the visual spectacle and the emotional significance of the moment. The procession had become a global event, with viewing parties organized in Commonwealth countries and royal enthusiasts gathering in American hotels to watch the proceedings. The international audience demonstrated the continuing fascination with British royal traditions. Local school children had been granted special viewing positions near the palace gates, their excited voices creating a constant background of youthful enthusiasm. Many wore costumes representing different periods of British history, from Tudor courtiers to Victorian ladies, their creative interpretations adding educational value to the day's entertainment. Teachers used the opportunity to provide real-time history lessons, connecting classroom learning with living tradition. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mall as the procession approached its final destination. Buckingham Palace loomed ahead, its familiar facade decorated with massive royal standards that fluttered in the gentle breeze. The palace gates stood open in ceremonial welcome, their golden details gleaming in the late afternoon light. Princess Catherine felt her heart rate increase as she prepared for the moment that would mark her formal arrival at the seat of British royal power. Captain Morrison checked his watch and confirmed that the procession remained precisely on schedule despite numerous ceremonial stops and interactions with local communities. The Welsh Guard had maintained their exemplary standards throughout the lengthy journey, their professionalism serving as a visible symbol of military loyalty to the crown. The successful completion of this historic escort duty would become part of the regiment's proud traditions. The gates of Buckingham Palace came into full view as the procession approached the final 100 meters of its historic journey. The palace's imposing facade, built from Bath stone that glowed warmly in the afternoon sunlight, represented the culmination of centuries of British royal tradition. Princess Catherine felt her emotions intensify as she recognized that crossing this threshold would mark not just the end of a ceremonial journey, but the beginning of a new chapter in her life and in the monarchy's continuing evolution. Thousands of spectators packed every available space around the Victoria Memorial, their voices joining in spontaneous renditions of "God Save the King" that echoed off the palace walls. The circular monument, topped by its golden statue of Queen Victoria, provided a dramatic centerpiece for the gathering crowds. Foreign tourists mixed with local residents, many of whom had traveled from distant parts of the kingdom specifically to witness this historic moment. The Welsh Guard executed a final ceremonial maneuver as they approached the palace forecourt, their red uniforms creating a living carpet of color against the pale stone pavement. Captain Morrison felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment as his men maintained perfect formation despite hours of continuous marching. The precision of their movements demonstrated the highest standards of military professionalism, upholding traditions that connected the modern army with centuries of service to the Crown Palace. Guards in their distinctive scarlet tunics and bearskin caps had formed an honor corridor leading to the main entrance, their ceremonial swords drawn in salute. The sight created a tunnel of military pageantry that seemed to channel the weight of history itself toward the palace doors. Princess Catherine observed the assembled soldiers with deep respect, understanding that their loyalty represented one of the monarchy's most enduring foundations. The state landau slowed to its ceremonial walking pace as it entered the palace grounds, the gray horses responding to Master Whitfield's gentle commands with the precision that only years of training could achieve. The gravel beneath the carriage wheels created a distinctive sound that had announced royal arrivals for generations, a subtle percussion that seemed to resonate with the heartbeat of the watching nation. Senior members of the royal household stood assembled on the palace steps, their formal court dress creating a tableau of ceremonial grandeur. The Lord Chamberlain, wearing his traditional gold key of office, waited to receive Princess Catherine with the dignity befitting such a momentous occasion. Behind him, ladies-in-waiting and private secretaries formed a receiving line that represented the complex hierarchy of palace life. Television, cameras positioned throughout the forecourt captured every detail of the arrival for audiences watching around the world. The images would be preserved in national archives, becoming part of the historical record that future generations would study to understand this pivotal moment in British royal history. Commentary provided in dozens of languages reached viewers from Tokyo to Toronto, demonstrating the global fascination with British royal traditions. Princess Catherine could see familiar faces among the palace staff, people who had served her family with unwavering loyalty throughout her lifetime. Their presence provided emotional comfort during what could have been an overwhelming moment, reminding her that the monarchy's strength lay not just in ceremony but in the personal relationships that sustained it through generations of change and challenge. The Welsh Guard performed a final presentation of arms as the state landau came to rest at the palace entrance. Captain Morrison's voice rang out across the forecourt as he commanded his men through the intricate movements of the ceremonial salute. The sound of rifles being shouldered in perfect unison created a sharp percussion that seemed to punctuate the formal conclusion of their escort. Duties. A red carpet had been unfurled, from the palace doors to the carriage steps, its rich color providing a striking contrast against the gray stone pavement. Palace footmen in their traditional livery waited to assist Princess Catherine's descent from the landau, their white-gloved hands extended in service that connected the present moment with centuries of royal protocol. Every detail had been choreographed with the precision that characterized such historic occasions. The crowd's cheering reached crescendo levels as Princess Catherine prepared to step from the carriage, their enthusiasm creating an almost physical wave of sound that washed over the palace forecourt. Children perched on their parents' shoulders waved flags with unbridled excitement, while elderly spectators wiped tears from their eyes as they witnessed a moment that would become part of their personal memories of royal history. Master Whitfield maintained perfect control of the gray horses despite the overwhelming noise and excitement surrounding them. The animals' calm demeanor reflected their extensive training and breeding, qualities that had made them suitable for such demanding ceremonial duties. Their successful completion of the journey would ensure their place in the royal stable's records of distinguished service. Princess Catherine rose gracefully from her seat, her ceremonial gown catching the afternoon light as she prepared to make her formal entrance into Buckingham Palace as heir apparent. The diamond diadem on her head sparkled brilliantly, its precious stones creating tiny rainbows that seemed to dance in the sunlight. The sight took the breath away from even the most jaded observers, reminding everyone present of the magic that still surrounded the British monarchy. The Lord Chamberlain stepped forward to offer his formal welcome, his words carrying across the forecourt through strategically placed microphones. His speech, though brief, captured the historical significance of the moment, while acknowledging the personal courage required for Princess Catherine to accept the weight of royal responsibility. The formality of his address contrasted with the obvious emotion in his voice. Palace guards presented arms in a final salute as Princess Catherine stepped onto the red carpet, her first footsteps on palace ground marking the symbolic beginning of her new role. The Welsh Guard maintained their formation in the background, their successful completion of escort duties representing the military's continuing loyalty to the crown. Captain Morrison felt deep satisfaction, knowing his men had upheld their regiment's finest traditions. Members of the royal family appeared at palace windows, their presence acknowledging the significance of the arrival while maintaining appropriate ceremonial distance. Their faces reflected the complex emotions of the day, combining pride in Princess Catherine's grace under pressure with awareness of the challenges that lay ahead. The monarchy's ability to balance public ceremony with private feeling had always been one of its most compelling characteristics. The afternoon sun began to cast longer shadows across the palace forecourt as the formal arrival ceremonies reached their climax. Princess Catherine paused at the palace threshold, turning back toward the assembled crowds to offer a final wave of acknowledgement. The gesture created one of the day's most memorable images, capturing both her gratitude for public support and her commitment to the responsibilities that awaited her within the palace walls. The great doors of Buckingham Palace stood open in ceremonial welcome, their imposing height framing the entrance to centuries of royal history. Beyond the threshold lay rooms where monarchs had made decisions that shaped the nation's destiny, where state papers had been signed, and diplomatic receptions had strengthened international relationships. Princess Catherine understood that crossing this threshold would connect her directly with that unbroken chain of royal service. Princess Catherine crossed the threshold of Buckingham Palace as the great clock in the central courtyard chimed 5 o'clock, marking not just the hour, but the completion of one of the most significant royal processions in modern British history. The palace doors closed behind her with a soft finality that seemed to separate the public pageantry from the private responsibilities that now awaited her. Inside the grand entrance hall, silence replaced the cheers of the crowd, creating a moment of profound transition between her public and private roles. The marble hall stretched before her in magnificent splendor, its cream-colored walls and gilded decorations reflecting the soft light that filtered through tall windows. Portraits of previous monarchs gazed down from their ornate frames, their painted eyes seeming to welcome her into their exclusive company. Princess Catherine felt the weight of their collective gaze, understanding that she had joined a succession that stretched back through centuries of triumph, tragedy, and transformation. Palace staff lined the hallway in silent tribute, their presence acknowledging the historical significance of the moment while maintaining the dignity befitting such an occasion. Many had served the royal family for decades, witnessing countless ceremonial events but recognizing that today marked something truly special. Their faces reflected a mixture of professional pride and personal emotion as they watched Princess Catherine assume her new role within the palace hierarchy. The Lord Chamberlain escorted her through corridors lined with priceless artwork and artifacts collected by generations of monarchs. Each room told stories of state visits, diplomatic negotiations, and family celebrations that had shaped British history. The Blue Drawing Room, where she paused briefly, had hosted everyone from foreign presidents to Nobel Prize winners, its elegant furnishings providing a backdrop for countless moments of international significance. Captain Morrison supervised the Welsh Guard's ceremonial dismissal in the palace forecourt, their duties now complete after flawless execution of the escort mission. The soldiers would return to their barracks with stories to tell their families and friends, but their professional satisfaction came from knowing they had upheld the highest standards of military service. Their red uniforms would be cleaned and pressed, ready for the next ceremonial duty that would continue their regiment's proud traditions. Outside the palace gates, crowds began to disperse slowly, many reluctant to leave after witnessing such a spectacular display of British pageantry. Families gathered their belongings and shared their favorite moments from the day, while souvenir vendors enjoyed brisk sales of commemorative items. The economic impact of the procession would be felt throughout London's tourism industry, with hotels, restaurants, and shops all benefiting from the international attention focused on the capital. Television crews packed their equipment while completing final broadcasts to audiences around the world. The procession had been watched by an estimated global audience of over 2 billion people, making it one of the most viewed royal events in history. Commentary provided in dozens of languages had brought the spectacle to viewers from Sydney to Stockholm, demonstrating the continuing global fascination with British royal traditions. Master Whitfield led the grey horses back to the royal stables, where grooms waited to provide them with well-deserved rest and refreshment after their demanding performance. The horses had maintained perfect composure throughout the lengthy journey, their training and breeding evident in every step. Their successful completion of such an important ceremonial duty would ensure their continued selection for future royal occasions. Within the palace, Princess Catherine met with senior household officials to review the day's events and discuss the schedule for the coming weeks. Her new role required coordination with dozens of departments, from protocol officers to security specialists, all working together to ensure the smooth functioning of the monarchy. The complexity of palace operations impressed her. Despite years of preparation for this responsibility, the state landau was carefully cleaned and returned to the royal mews, where it would be maintained in pristine condition for future ceremonial use. The historic carriage had once again fulfilled its role as a link between past and present, carrying royal tradition forward into another generation. Its golden framework would be polished until it gleamed, ready for the next occasion when history would require its services. News reports from around the world highlighted different aspects of the procession, with international media focusing on everything from Princess Catherine's elegant appearance to the military precision of the Welsh Guard. Social media platforms buzzed with photographs and videos shared by spectators, creating a digital record of the day that complemented official documentation. The global reach of modern communications had transformed a British royal event into an international celebration. As evening approached, Princess Catherine stood at a palace window overlooking the Mall, where maintenance crews were already beginning to dismantle the temporary structures erected for the day's festivities. The scene reminded her that even the most magnificent pageantry was temporary, while the responsibilities it represented would continue for the rest of her life. The crowds had gone home, but the monarchy's work would continue with each new day. Local authorities reported that the procession had been completed without any significant incidents, a testament to months of careful planning and coordination between multiple agencies. Police, military, and civilian officials had worked seamlessly together to ensure public safety, while allowing maximum access for spectators. The successful execution of such a complex operation demonstrated the professional competence that underpinned British ceremonial traditions. The Welsh Guard returned to their barracks as heroes, their families and friends eager to hear first-hand accounts of the day's events. Many of the soldiers had taken part in combat operations in distant lands, but they understood that ceremonial duties represented an equally important aspect of military service. Their successful escort of Princess Catherine had honored both their regiment and the broader tradition of military loyalty to the crown. In the days that followed, historians would analyze every aspect of the procession, comparing it with similar events throughout British history. The seamless blend of ancient tradition and modern technology had created a uniquely contemporary royal spectacle that honored the past while embracing the future. Princess Catherine's grace under pressure had demonstrated her readiness for the challenges that lay ahead. The royal procession to Buckingham Palace had concluded successfully, but its impact would resonate for years to come. Children who had watched from the sidewalks would tell their own grandchildren about the day they saw a princess become heir apparent. The images captured by millions of cameras would preserve the moment for future generations, ensuring that this spectacular display of British pageantry would never be forgotten. Princess Catherine prepared for her first evening as heir apparent, understanding that the magnificent procession had marked not an ending, but a beginning. The cheers of the crowd had faded, but the responsibility they represented would accompany her for the rest of her life. The journey to Buckingham Palace was complete, but her true journey of service to the nation had only just begun.